India has surpassed Japan to become the world's fourth largest economy with a projected GDP of $4.19 billion for the financial year 2025-26. Niti Aayog CEO BVR Subramaniam on Sunday asserted that India is at a takeoff stage and within the next 2.5 to 3 years will become even the world's third largest economy. The US, China and Germany are now the only three economies larger than India. The US boasts a 30.5 trillion economy, followed by China at 19.23 trillion, way ahead. Germany sits just ahead of India, though, at $4.7 trillion. So that's the big news, in a way, for those who are hopeful that India will now soon be not just the fourth, but the third largest economy at some stage in the next couple of years. Joining me now is someone who is one of India's most respected economists, joined by Neelkanth Mishra, Chief Economist at Axis Bank, Head of Global Research, Axis Capital. He's also been part of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council. Neelkanth Mishra, appreciate your joining us. How should we look at these numbers, the fact that India has overtaken Japan to become the fourth largest economy in the world? Give us the positives that you first see.
Well, I think sustaining a growth rate is much harder than it seems. So we almost take it as inevitable that growing the economy in nominal terms at 10 to 11% year after year, in real terms at 6 to 7% year after year. There are many countries that have struggled to sustain this growth rate for several decades. So I think we should pat ourselves on the back that through all the political churn, through all the changes, through all the global turbulence, that we've been able to sustain this growth rate. To some extent, this is also an inevitability. So in economics, what we call the productivity frontier, we are very far away from the productivity frontier. So in early stages, it is easy to catch up. So you can do the simple things much earlier. And therefore, I think the growth rate can be sustained. As you start getting closer to the productivity frontier, the growth starts to become harder and tougher decisions need to be taken. So we need to sustain this growth rate. So even though we are the fourth largest economy in per capita GDP, we are not even in the top 100. And therefore, from the perspective of bringing up the quality of life of the average Indian, there is a very long way for us to go.
Let's look at that per capita income GDP point, Neelkanth, that you made, because we're not in the top 100 globally when it comes to per capita income, even as we become the fourth largest economy in gross GDP terms. But remember that our economy, as was pointed out, in terms even of per capita, has increased substantially over the last 20 years, over the last 2 decades in particular. So how does one see it? The fact is that per capita income doubled from US dollars 1,438 in 2013-14 to US dollars 2,880 in 2024 in 11 years. So over the last 20 years, both under a UPA government from 2003 to 13 and then now over the next 10 years, there's been a fair increase. Now, should we be looking at that and be satisfied, sanguine, look, that we are moving in the right direction? Or is there still a long way to go, particularly on per capita income?
Oh, we should be quite happy with what we've achieved, the problems we have solved, which have brought us to this level. We have significantly improved financial inclusion. We have provided basic infrastructure to crores of households through rural roads, through electricity, through dense energy, cooking gas, through phone connections, very cheap data. We are now starting to provide very cheap payment services. So there are many things that we have done very well. But at the same time, if we have to move from $2,800 or $3,000 per capita to $10,000 per capita, there are many harder challenges to solve. Just like the discussions you were having just before we started discussing per capita GDP, like the challenge of urbanization. I think we have not done enough, and I think there's a very long way to go. And in fact, if we have to get to $10,000, we have to solve those problems. Otherwise, we won't get there.
So are we as some critics or skeptics suggest, trapped in a middle income country trap? Can we really ever become a high income country given the size and of the challenges, our sheer population?
No, the middle income trap hits you around $10,000 per capita. That's where just copying what the rest of the world has done and moving forward is not enough. We have a long way to go to get caught there. I think we have at least 15 years before we start worrying about the middle income trap. But we need to start working towards preventing getting caught in that trap, because after you get there, you can't really think about getting out of it, because the economic models, the economic structure that gets you from low income to middle income is not the economic structure that will take you from middle income to high income. So you need to become a product nation. So it's very encouraging that a lot of government messaging over the past year and a half has actively talked about strategic autonomy, developing intellectual property within India, building brands, building Indian multinationals. All of these are extremely important if you have to break through the middle income trap, which I think is inevitable for any country to go through that phase. Whether you break through that or you get stuck in it is dependent on what economic models you use. So countries like South Korea, Taiwan, Spain, which have in the last 30, 40 years broken through the middle income trap, I think have a lot of lessons for us. So if we deregulate, if we build our cities well, if we focus on research and development, if we focus on developing our own intellectual property, I think the chances of getting stuck in the middle income trap are very low. And we also must remember that given India's size, while South Korea's growth or Taiwan's growth or Spain's growth did not really challenge anyone, as India starts to drive its heft, even at $4 trillion, we are very, very large. We are now starting to become an inevitable part of global plans for multinationals. Imagine if we were a 15 or $20 trillion economy. We will start becoming a threat to many other large economies. So this is the concept of the resisted rise. We will start to see other countries starting to put impediments on our path. So therefore, I think preparing for what will hit us maybe 10, 12, 15 years later, and the challenges that make countries get stuck in the middle income trap, we need to start working on them right now.
The other trap, if you want to call it, is the inequality trap, Neelkanth, because if I look at some reports on inequality index suggest that we still are simply not where we should be. The top 10% of the population will account for 60, 70% of income, according to some figures at least. Is that going to remain a major challenge, and how does one overcome that? You spoke of inclusive growth, but there is a sense that we still haven't been able to really build towards making a slightly less unequal society.
So you're absolutely right. I think the fact that at this stage of growth, there is no economy in the world which has not seen an increase in inequality, because at this stage of growth, where a very large percentage of people are available in the labor force that are shifting from agriculture to manufacturing or services, there is a surplus of labor and there is a shortage of capital. So what tends to happen is labor then loses pricing power because there are too many workers and too little capital. So capital has more pricing power, and therefore income starts to shift towards capital, and that drives an increase in inequality. In fact, this is standard economic theory that at this stage of economic development, it is very hard to avoid an increase in inequality. But at the same time, I think it's extremely important. Remember that between 2012 and 2023, we actually saw consumption inequality in India fall. And that happened because we provided better infrastructure in terms of roads, phones, electricity, cooking gas, and a lot of things that drive productivity. If we keep focusing on that, we can perhaps drive a path which does not drive an inevitable rise in inequality. Because remember that if this keeps happening, some of the political consensus that exists towards economic reforms, towards opening up, towards increasing the involvement of the private sector, which is inevitable, which is essential for us to keep growing, that political consensus can start to erode. So therefore, I think it's extremely important that we manage to drive the growth on a path which does not increase inequality to the extent it can. And there are ways of doing that. So we have seen that over the past decade. I think going forward, providing again cheap access to electricity, providing cheap credit through things like the India stack, allowing for cheap credit to be provided at scale, small 50,000, 1 lakh rupee loans to be provided at scale, small equity capital to be provided at scale, providing entrepreneurship growth, startups across major Indian cities. I think all of these are ways in which we can temper the inevitable rise in inequality. But after some time, it's called the Lewis turning point. I mean, when the labor supply stops growing, inequality starts to come down, or is expected to come down. But that's some distance away. I think in the interim, we have to be very careful about the rising inequality.
I'm going to leave it there, Neelkanth, for giving us that very sharp overview with all the challenges and indeed the opportunities that lie ahead. Appreciate you taking the time off to join us. Thank you so much.